Helen. Thank you so much for joining the CIO Association of Canada's My Career in Tech, featuring 22 women in technology, empowering and supporting diversity in tech. So I thought we could start off first by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us about your current role and also your role as a volunteer with the CIO Association of Canada.
Sure, great. Thanks. Happy to. My name's Helen Knight. I fight poverty with technology by driving change in nonprofit social profits across Canada. It's difficult to realize the promise of technology without elevating the understanding of the technical barriers to all of the incredible work that the social organizations do. So I work at increasing the understanding of technology, getting more CIOs on the board, and then actually building effective and cohesive ecosystems that align with the missions of the nonprofits I work with. My role with the Calgary chapter, I was the first female board member, the first female vice president, and now first female president of the Calgary chapter. I love the Calgary chapter. We have 50 members of smart, fun CIOs who I reach out to with all sorts of questions, and we have really exciting conversations. I think twice I've had my budget slashed on the same day we had an event, and I couldn't have asked for better therapy than having those great people who've been through it, identifying and learning from peers in the association. It's such a meaningful connections I make through the CIO Association.
Oh, that's amazing. And thank you so much for being a volunteer and leading and helping to break the bias around leadership within our own organization. So I appreciate that very, very much. So the next question I wanted to talk to you about is this year for International Women's Day, the theme is breaking the bias. And really, it's to break the bias to create a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Now, we know in Canada, especially in the tech sector, gender diversity is really thin. There's a lot of research out there that say that women don't even believe tech companies in Canada want to hire them. So I just wanted to ask you how you've had to deal with issues around gender diversity and bias in your own career. And then what are some of the examples of how we can improve inclusivity in our sector?
Honestly, I learned to program when I was 9 years old. I was lucky to have early access to technology. I learned to turtle on an Apple II. I had a Commodore 64 at home, loved technology, robots, all the cool stuff. But when I went to high school is the first time I encountered gender bias when I was told that computers were for boys. And I listened. I shouldn't have. But I stepped away from technology for years. It took me until my late 20s to return, remember, oh, hey, I'm really good at this. I really like it. Begin going back to school and building my career up from then. So I spent a lot of time working with girls in that junior high, high school age to make sure that they don't repeat the mistake that I do and they don't internalize that messaging. So I've been involved with technology for almost 40 years. But last week, a very senior peer suggested that I shouldn't interview somebody for my own team because they wanted someone technical to do it. If 40 years in this field isn't enough for me to be technical, it's just exhausting sometimes. It's real, it happens. And I didn't call them out because I don't want to be that difficult person to work with. I prove my worth by focusing on the deliverables, and relationships are a big part of it. But I encounter these challenges on at least a monthly basis, and it's not fun. So the role that we all have to play, not putting the burden of creating diversity on the diverse. So I'm really excited for this series. I think it's great. I'm excited for the International Women's Day and the positive changes that I see happen every time. But when I was at a large energy company, we had a women in engineering group that I joined as the only woman in technology. Wasn't big enough to have our own. And we had these great ideas like bake sales, and we thought that we were spreading positive messaging. But it was only when we had a senior vice president join our group, who was a male, who was confident enough in himself and his experience and his role, that he said, let's demand the salary ratios of every person in engineering and build it into a graph and demand change. The power of advocacy and inviting the perhaps not diverse into those diverse groups to advocate on our behalf, and the thoughts and the incredible confidence that comes with it, you benefit so much. So, don't ask a group of women to change gender diversity in technology. That's not how this is going to play. It's a combination of people, and it's a combination of understanding how a greater diversity equals a greater collective intelligence equals more career success, better technology solutions. So it's a really complicated combination. The other thing I'll recommend is that everybody takes the Harvard Men versus Women Implicit Association test. When I took it, I was shocked to find out that I'm even a misogynist, no matter, third generation matriarchal family, but I still found that. And it teaches me to make sure that I'm practicing intentional advocacy and not silencing women's voices and giving them opportunities as well. I think everyone needs to do an assessment to recognize their unconscious bias and then actively fight against it. We're not going to get any further by surrounding us with people that agree with us.
Love it. And I really love the idea. And this has come up a lot in these interviews, is the intentional, being
Mhm.
intentional in the way you want to help to change your organization or move things forward. I think that is such an important part of how we can grow as organizations and grow as individuals and have a voice. It's so important. And as you said, one person came in and said, let's intentionally do this. And that changed the way in which the whole organization worked and how people felt within it. So that's amazing. So I appreciate that. And I love hearing about your own career and getting involved in tech at a very early age, and the way now you can impact on letting younger girls know that they can still take a path in the STEM or STEAM subjects and continue on in a really exciting career. Right? So that's amazing. Thank you for doing that. The next question I'm really interested in, I have a passion for access to education. I have a passion for working and making sure that individuals are connected and there's all the supports that are in place for those that might live in priority or underserved areas and communities. So I know you have a passion for that as well, and really improving support for the underserved. Can you describe the work that you're doing to enable social profits across Canada?
Happily. It's important that people understand that there's not just work in the technical organizations, that most of the members from the CIO Association work in organizations that have missions outside of technology, but utilize the technology in a way that delivers, multiplied results. So enabling all the people that don't consider tech super fun to do their job faster, more efficiently, with better informed, making great decisions. And within nonprofit, I've found so much success and excitement with the work that I've done. One little example I'll give you, there was a volunteering department. There were 7 people, they were working full time. There was really high turnover. There was, it was an entry level job, and they were managing 5,000 volunteers. 5,000 volunteers a year, it's a lot. So answering telephones and writing down a paper calendar, putting some things in an online calendar. And their one request was, can we just have a shared calendar instead of all these calendars? And I did an investigation into their department, and all of their work was so complicated, registering all of these volunteers, that by simply creating a system where the effort was pushed to the volunteer. So now the volunteer would sign in, register themselves, take the orientation, upload their police check, upload their certifications, validate that they've taken the online training, sign off on the policies, put all that labor on the excited volunteer who's there to help you. One, it acts as a barrier for people that just want to show up one afternoon on, Christmas Eve, but it also takes that burden off of the volunteer team. So then the volunteer gets to actually schedule themselves in based on, okay, now they're being reflected roles that align to their expertise and their interest. That one system, it was $200,000. It was difficult to convince the governing board that this was a worthwhile investment. It was 50% of the salaries for that department for a whole year. But the change that it made is the change that I'm able to make with technology in multiple social profits. It returned 50% of the time, like 20 hours per person per week, to that department, that they focused on intentional relationship management. That journey, it doubled the volunteers to 10,000 from 5,000, and it also increased donations by $5 million the following year. So there's some pretty strong ROI on it. But the most amazing thing was all those new volunteers and the new funding allowed the social workers to focus on their area of expertise, they housed 42% more people the following year. A tiny technical investment of best practice technology applied in the right way, thoughtfully implemented by people that are experts in it, made such a significant difference that so often I see the social profits are about saving money and reducing costs and using, oh, we got this free license and oh, we got this donated hardware. That's
Yeah,
absolutely not where the returns are.
right.
There are best practice tools and technology that private organizations are using, that many members are using, that can be so incredibly effective at nonprofits. But I need CIO Association members to join nonprofit boards and advocate for doing things the right way, like they do in their organizations.
That is an amazing story. And I used to work at Pathways to Education, and one of the stories that we talked about was the impact. So if you were able to grow more volunteers and grow more support for the organizations, and social workers could focus on what they were supposed to do, that has an overall impact. That investment has an overall impact on the impact to society. So the tax burden, the healthcare burden, all of that stuff. So I mean, just making that transition, helping that organization innovate, create better systems and processes, get more volunteers, get more support for the end user. That is huge to be able to do that transformation, because in the end, it probably impacts greatly on the cost to our social networks, our healthcare networks, our taxes, that whole thing of empowering people and providing supports they need, then actually they become less of a burden on our society. So I think that that's incredible. And I love that. And I think there's 80,000 charities across Canada. You could be very busy helping them all doing this kinds of transformation. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So the last question I wanted to ask you are, what are the 3 tips you can provide to women in their careers, probably some younger women in their careers, as to how they navigate their careers and get the support they need?
I'm working on creating a ladder networking approach, because I think it's important that people that are in a mentoring relationship are close enough in their stages. So finding ways for universities to mentor high school students, and for new grads to mentor university students, and for people further along in their career, I think building on that ladder networking is going to be highly helpful. But until that exists, making sure that every time, at any technical conference, I do some great networking in the ladies' room. There's only 3 people in there. There's never a lineup. And they're amazing people. Get their names, get their contact information, and follow them on LinkedIn. And I got a great tip from the vice president of the CIO Association. When you reach out to them on LinkedIn, personalize the message with a note about where you met them. Because then when you need them 2 years later and you search in your messages, you can actually instantly remember. It's like your own client relationship management tool,
Yeah.
and you can find out where you knew them from. So build strong networks and follow up to make sure that you have that connection, so that you can reach out and you can search them in the future. Creating a personal advisory board instead of reaching out to someone to be a mentor, which is a very can be a time intensive thing, and can be something that the more senior leaders can be asked to do an awful lot. A personal advisory board is a series of people of different interests and organizations that you can propose problems and challenges to, and they'll work together with their collective intelligence to support you. So it doesn't need to be formalized in a real way, but you'll have a lot more people saying yes to, will you be a member of my personal advisory board? Then will you be my mentor? And finally, asking questions. There's a lot of neurobiological examples under Dr. Luann Brezidine's work. She's an instructor at Harvard, Yale, and Oxford educated, awesome woman. But the female brain does work differently. There are different neurobiological strengths. So when you're in a meeting room and they're talking about something and it's just not fitting right, ask a question, speak up. You don't need to say this seems crazy, but ask more questions about it, because the differences in the way that women think are truly aligned to the gaps in the way technology works cohesively together. So when you ask those questions, we've all got to be careful about tone, unfortunately, because we haven't reduced that unconscious bias across the board yet. But when you're asking those questions and really digging for things, not only are you learning, getting so much free education from everyone around you, but you're challenging the people in your team and leadership to think differently about the problem And sometimes you'll find something that occurs to you that doesn't occur to them that will save millions of dollars, deliver a better product, reduce the pain. So being positive, but finding your voice. And then when you have that voice, making sure that other people have the room to find and express theirs, it's really important. But if it doesn't seem right to you and there's 10 dudes sitting around the table totally agreeing with each other, that's the time to ask the question, because probably the thing you're thinking about isn't occurring to them. Maybe they're suffering from groupthink. And
Mhm.
the thing that you're struggling with is the breakthrough that they all need to find success.
That really is a very powerful, just understanding how you think, having a voice, expressing that voice, making sure you're heard. I think those are all really important tips. And I think, as we build our careers, sometimes it takes a bit longer for us to understand how to do that. So bringing that personal board together to support you is great too. And having allies with men on those boards and women tours and all that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sharing today on our 22 Women in Tech series. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the work you're doing to support organizations in the nonprofit space really understand digital transformation to really help grow and support those in underserved communities and those in need. So thank you so much, Helen.
Thanks so much. Always happy to have this conversation.